And
And I would like to say something before you start,
sure.
that Zoroastrians are known as Parsi in India, and they have great contribution to India, not just in industrial form, but in the navy, in the armed forces. Manik Shah was four-star general. So I mean, not just one category. They contributed all over, and they are being recognized, and they are the great industrialists of India.
Thank you
And
for
they are only 0.4%. Zoroastrians are only 0.4% of the
Less than
population.
less than 0.5%, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Jagjit. That's great. And officially, I'd like to welcome you to this this event. And my name is Guy Blood, and I'm the current president of the Edmonton Interfaith Center. And we usually concentrate on working on issues that concern our societies. We work together to promote harmony and peace and inclusion amongst all the different faith groups. But often we do feature a particular faith and get them to talk about their beliefs and their traditions and their events that are coming up. And today we've got Firdosh Mehta. He's going to speak to us about the Zoroastrian community and tell us more about that. And he's been talking to us already quite a bit about the history and the significance of the Zoroastrian faith. But he has a particular presentation available soon. But before we get to that, I'm wondering if anybody has been assigned to do an acknowledgement of the land we're on, the Treaty 6 land. If not, I will say that let us imagine that we are on this land, the prairie of Turtle Island. We're wandering around free and easy and enjoying the hunting and the lakes and the trees and each other and the communities. And all of a sudden we notice other people coming in, people leaving survey monuments in the ground, and other settlers coming in and occupying the land and building houses. And we wonder what's going on, but we see that people are occupying the land. And so we appeal to the government to stop that, or at least provide some space for us. And the Indigenous chiefs in this area approached the Dominion of Canada government and asked for a contract, a treaty in the terminology of the day, and to provide them with some assurance that they had space in the land. And they were granted areas of land that were called reservations, and they ceded all the rest of the land to the Dominion of Canada. And I don't think they understood the idea of private ownership, or else they probably would have resisted a little bit more. And in return, they got not only these parcels of land, but also some assurance of agricultural equipment and medicine and education. And the government actually rescinded on many of those contract items, and has been causing us trouble ever since. And so just wanted to acknowledge that we're here on this land, we're benefiting from it, and it was arranged in a way that was fairly deceptive, and we've been trying to correct it ever since. So with that, I'd like to, it's just something we like to do before every event, so that we acknowledge where we are and our debt to the Indigenous people that own this land to start with. And with that, I would like to ask Netta, are you prepared to introduce our speaker?
I sure am. Our own dear Firdosh, who was a member of is still a member of the Edmonton Interfaith Center and has been for many years. He's a board member, and he has always been one of our most popular speakers. He's a graduated professional mechanical engineer from India and Massachusetts, and a founding member and past president of the Zoroastrian Associations of Alberta and BC, and the Federation of Zoroastrian Associations of North America, known as FZANA. Since he moved to BC, he has chaired several committees, including those focused on interfaith and libraries. He regularly presents on various topics in the Zoroastrian faith to schools, universities, churches, temples, and worship centers globally, including representations at international religious and peace conferences in Barcelona and London, and the parliaments of world religions in Salt Lake City and Toronto, and when we hosted the NAIN, North American Interfaith Network conference here in 2018. He's conducted children's Sunday school classes in Edmonton, Dallas, Calgary, Vancouver, and more, and has guest taught in Houston, New Delhi, and Dubai. He's received many community service awards, so just to name a few, the Vision Foundation Award, India as a non-resident Indian, and is part of that, and the Outstanding Zoroastrian Award of Fazana as well. So welcome, dear Firdosh.
Thank you, Neta. I just want to comment on one award that you mentioned about outstanding. Don't worry, I have experience all my life of being outstanding. Even in class, when I was a naughty boy, the teacher used to make me stand outside. So I was always outstanding. But in any case, if I can screen share, I can start my program for you today. Okay, can everybody see this first slide? Somebody respond, please.
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you. Okay, today we are going to talk about Yalda, which is a festival that many communities and cultures around the world also follow in different ways. And I'm also going to give you an idea of the connection of that with Christmas, which will make it even more interesting for you folks. This is called the Festival of 40 Nights, or Shab-e-Chele in Persian. We usually start off with laying out a neat table for different kinds of food, and especially in the winter, it's mostly fruits and nuts and dried fruits. Whereas in spring, for our Nowruz, we do set out a table which is a different kind of table with more green vegetables and other things regarding spring event in the weather. Shab means night and Chele means 40. Shab-e-Chele, Yalda, or Shab-e-Yalda are a night of 40, marks the night opening the initial 40-day period of the 3-month winter. Please keep your mind focused on everything that I say here in terms of the weather and earth sciences, etc., that we are all in the northern hemisphere. That's an important point to consider. From which came Chala, or 40, which derives as Shab-e-Chele, is the night opening the big Chele period. That is the night between the last day of autumn and first day of winter. The term Yalda is borrowed from Syriac-speaking Nestorian Christians from the 1st to 3rd centuries. Many of them settled in the Arsakid and Sassanid satrapies, or those were the two Persian empires, the second and the third. The Arsakid was also known as the Parthian Empire, and the Sasanian Empire is the Sassanid Empire. And satrapies are really provinces where they had protection from religious persecution. So you can see the initial early times of the development of Christianity, there was protection from the Persian empires. Western Iranians, such as the Parthians, Persians, and others came in contact with them for celebration of Yalda. In the Syriac, a Middle Aramaic dialect, it means birth, which fell 9 months after Annunciation, which was celebrated on the eve of Winter Solstice. This Syriac term was borrowed into Persian, and gradually Shab-e-Yalda and Shab-e-Chele became synonymous, and the two are used interchangeably. Coming back to understanding what we are all about, this wonderful ball that is whirling around in space, we call home. The amazing part of Earth is that it has its rotation not in the central axis, but the rotation axis is 23 degrees off. from the main one, causing the inclination of the earth as it goes around the sun. And as you can see, this inclination causes parts of the earth to be closer to the sun and parts to be away from the sun in its journey around the sun. This is what gives rise to weather. This is what gives rise to seasons. This is what gives rise to so many issues about earth sciences that we need to understand. But much of that is now known. Of course, in the times of Galileo and Copernicus and all that, world was different. Today, we know so much about our own solar system that our eyes are now set up for galaxies far away. The Tropic of Cancer, also referred to as the Northern Tropic, is the most northerly circle of latitude on the Earth, at which the sun may appear directly overhead at its culmination. Now, we're going to talk about latitudes today. Second one, the southern hemisphere counterpart, making the most southerly position at which the sun may appear directly overhead, is the Tropic of Capricorn. To give you an idea in a simple picture, here is the Earth with the axis inclined while rotating. One side is the sun side, and as you can see, it develops the concept of the three major latitudes, especially with the two additional circles, the Arctic and the Antarctic in the north and the south. These three latitudes of the Tropic of Cancer, Equator, and the Tropic of Capricorn give rise to season as the sun apparently moves from one to the other. So when the sun is coming toward the summertime, it moves from the equator in the northern hemisphere up to Tropic of Cancer, turns around, goes back down, goes past through the equator to the Tropic of. This movement of the sun going, like I'm saying, this is apparent, okay? The sun doesn't go around the earth goes around the sun. But the apparent movement gives the two chances for the sun to get past the equator, giving us the two equinoxes, the spring and the autumn equinox that you can see on the right side of the screen. The northern equinox, therefore, gives the summer solstice and winter solstice. These four important times of the seasons of the year are celebrated in many cultures in many different ways. And in the Persian culture, it is celebrated as Tirgan, Nowruz, Mehrgan, and Yalda. Yalda is the one we are talking about to give you the idea. Obviously, the extremities of the movement of the sun are up to the Tropic of Cancer in the northern and down to the Tropic of Cancer in the southern hemisphere. So if you live in Australia, New Zealand, or in the southern hemisphere, all of these things will kind of go the other way. So you will have your spring when we in the north have our winter. Now, the sun, moon, and the stars are considered to be the best natural forms of light. Now, the moon really is not a source of light, but it does give light as a reflection from the sun, and that's why we get moonlight. But light is very, very important to many cultures and many different ways for us to understand what we identify with God or the deity of what is supposed to be the best force for survival. So here we go. In winter solstice, or it is also known as Sol Invictus, or the unconquered sun, was known as Mitra or Mitra in the Indo-Iranian Aryan tradition. In the Sanskrit writings, we do have the god of Mitra, etc. In the Zoroastrian scripture, the sun is referred to as Meher or Mitra. You see the H makes the difference between the two languages. Meher was worshipped as one of the important deities in many ancient cultures. The Egyptians had Ra, the Mesopotamians had Samash. Also in the early North and South American worship amongst the First Nations, sun was very important. This is depicted in one of the pictures of a royal chariot with the sun god Sol as he's named in other cultures. Winter solstice heralded the end of winter and the beginning of warmer days in the northern hemisphere around December 21. So essentially, once the sun starts to move to the north, the warmth, and therefore the life-giving force and germination of seeds, growing of leaves back onto the dried trees, etc., gives us the concept of renewal of life. This also is used in one of the carvings today in Iran, which is still there, of at least around 2000 years ago, the 3rd century in the Christian era, the investiture of the Sasanian Emperor Ardashir. It is a bas relief at Takht-e-Bostan, Iran. One needs to understand the artwork up to that time in Iran and Middle East was more or less two-dimensional. It always was done on the background of something on which, as if these features came out. It was not three-dimensional, which was developed later, or in some cases earlier with the Greeks and Romans, which is the three-dimensional, which becomes the statue. So this is a little different kind of two-dimensional compared to the one-dimensional paintings and the three-dimensional statues that we get. On the left stands the Yazata Meher, and it is depicted as Meher being the Yazata is more like a angel or some kind of supportive characteristics. And you can see and identify it by the sun's rays coming out from behind the head of Meher. In his right hand, he is holding the twigs of barsom, which was a kind of plant at that time that was commonly used in Zoroastrian prayer services, similar to what we are kind of using in many ways, even in the native culture, even in the native religious. And the halo of the sun sanctifying the investiture of the king. So here is a carving of God in the middle, giving the ring of authority or kingship to Ardashir, and Meher is residing over it as a witness. This connection to Mitra in Persian culture is well known as reverence to Mitra as Meher Yazid, also Varharam Yazid as the god of victory, and later on the Romans adopted Mitra, who became a god of victory in wars. We have now moved into the second phase of my topic talk, related, of course, in every way to the concept of Mitra. Mitraism, also known as Mithraic mysteries, was a mystery religion centered around the god Mithras that was practiced in the Roman Empire from about the 1st to the 4th century. The religion was inspired by the Persian worship of god Mitra, Proto-Indo-Iranian Mitra. On the right, you have again another bas relief in the rock, where you can recognize Mitra right away by two features. One is the sun's rays coming from behind. The halo is more in the shape of the rays. And the headgear, the cap that Mitra is wearing, is 100% identical and differential from the cap of anybody else, and that is the cap of the Persians. This cap with the lobe on the top is very much a part of Persian headgear, including the Persian army, etc. The mysteries were popular in the Roman military. The Roman imperial served and came up with a silver coin or a disc of Sol Invictus. Again, you can see what is on that has the sun's rays coming out from it, found at Pessinus in the British Museum. Thus, the 25th day of the month of December was practiced as a day of peace in honor of Mitra, and all wars in the Roman Empire were halted on this day. This was the original festival of Mitra, pretty close to Yalda, on the 25th day of December, where the equinox is around 21st or 22nd of December. With the advent of Christianity, this day of celebrating peace in the Roman Empire as the birthday of the sun, which in Persian is also known as Rapitvin, was converted to the day of rejoicing of the coming of Jesus Christ, who is regarded as the Prince of Peace, his message of love and compassion toward all living beings, even though that day is not truly the birthday of Christ. This was a combined effect of, in that time, in the Christian Empire, Byzantium, whatever you want to call it, and they adopted slowly into taking this concept of the light and meter. Zarathustri's, we can be proud of an important legacy of peace that was rooted in the Indo-Iranian Aryan belief through Mitra, and it still continues to this day. So things automatically brings me to another part of Yalda for that season. So who are these three important men and where are they going? What are they doing in December? These three are considered to be the three wise men coming from the east to come and see baby Jesus bearing royal gifts. Here is another marble relief where you can see, and again, note the headgear of the two folks on the right with that low cap of the Persian, which is also shown on the right in the bronze plate with headgear like that, with the barsom twigs in their hand, definitely noting as that is a Persian. Of course, I think this relief is not for a Persian magi or a priest, because it is more like a nobleman or somebody from the military because of the sword hanging at his waist. The Persian Zoroastrian religion and culture are connected to the Judeo-Christian beliefs in many ways. Out of the four biblical gospels, two of Matthew and Luke mention magi from the east. Though it is not exactly mentioned that there were three magi's, or magus, as they were called in the local language, they were from the land of Media and Median, and they were Mazda Yasni priests. Mazda Yasni is actually the true name of my religion. Yasni is worship, Mazda means wisdom. It is the religion of worship of wisdom. Of course, later on we became Zoroastrians and Zarathustri and Parsis and many other titles came about, but the original one, even in our prayer, recital of the simple prayer where we profess to be, we say, I am a Mazda Yasni, or I am a worshipper of wisdom. These Mazda Yasni priests have brought three gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, which leads to the widespread understanding that there had to be three of them. These were the kind of gifts exchanged by nobility and royalty. The other part of the three in those days and times is considered to be an important number for people who are traveling far from lands that are difficult through deserts and jungles and etc., etc. Nowadays, of course, we try to stay in pairs, but in those days, three was important because if one got injured and the other had to stay behind to look after him, the third one can go and get some help. It was a very simple, practical reason for the three of them. This is taken from the book Magi by Paul Roberts and True Information on Wiki. We have these books in our libraries. I have one at home also. And it's a very interesting book to read about the journey of this Magi. The New Testament does not give the names of the Magi. Another important thing to consider. However, traditions and legends identify a variety of different names for them. In Western Christian Church, they have been all regarded as saints and are commonly known as Melchior, or a Persian word, Gaspar or Gaspar, Jaspar, Jaspas, Jaspa, and other variations in the Indo-Iranian as an Indo-Iranian. Balthazar, or also Balthazar, Balthasar, and Pithisar, a Babylonian scholar, but this does not mention all of them to be Persian. The important thing is it does talk about all of them to be scholars. And in those days, the Magi or the Brahmin or the priestly class were the ones who had most of the education and the books and the scripts and the scripture, etc. And that's why they were known more as scholars than as priests. But in contrast, many Syrian Christians named the Magi as Narvandad, Vishnaspas, and Hormisdas. This Hormisdas is an important name that also comes from Greek literature. And the word Hormis is the short, it is actually Hormuz in Persian, which is the short combination of Ahura Mazda or God. So you have a name Hormisdas. This gives you a 100% indication that it is a Persian name. These names have a far greater likelihood of being originally Persian, though that does not guarantee their authenticity. So we are willing to accept that certain things we are not totally sure of, but we do and can research and find out best information we can. Who knows, as time goes by, we will have more research, more understanding, more archaeological finds, and our knowledge will grow and grow. The New Revised Standard Version of Matthew describes the visit of the Magi in the following manner. The time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, as some people are coming here to look for somebody who is so important. He was frightened, and calling together all of the chief priests and scribes, he inquired where the Messiah was to be born. So this is a link to understand that the concept of Messiah is also in the Persian culture. We also have an understanding of the coming of the Messiah, etc., but in slightly different ways. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea are by no means least among the rulers of Judea. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Since the Magi were knowledgeable about astrology derived from astronomy, they were good in understanding the solar system, hence the solar calendar, and they identified that this star is in the constellation of Judea. And Herod secretly learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search for the child, and when you have found him, let me know, so that I may also go and pay him homage." This, of course, we know today was actually a lie. Herod didn't really want to go and pay him homage. He actually wanted to destroy him so that he would not have anybody to challenge his leadership of the land of Judea. When the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy, and these 3 wise men, on entering the manger, saw the child with Mary, his mother, and Joseph, his elder uncle. They knelt down and paid homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold. Having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they returned by another path, for they had come from Save in Iran. This is my last slide, and on a very lighter side of life, I just want to bring a humorous understanding. That is the scene of nativity, with this particular scene, is so amazingly important to us Zoroastrians. Why? Look at that. How many Christians do you have in this picture? None. Christianity has not even developed yet. Jesus to get hold of. Many Muslims are there? None. Etc. etc. And guess what? With Joseph, Mary, and Jesus, we have 3 Jewish people, and with the 3 kings of Persia, there were 3 Persian Zoroastrians. So I joke with everybody that, look, in those days, we were 50% of the population. And look what we are going through now. And of course, that is just a simple way of looking at it. That things happen, things change. History is always evolving and changing. Thank you very much for your attention. I give you the Avestan Old Persian greeting of Ushta Te. Ushta is happiness, best happiness, and Te means to you, or may happiness be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Firdosh. That was wonderful, and we would take questions now. I think we're a small enough group. People can just sort of, I'll put up your hand, or you could use the hand function, or put something in the chat. I'd like to ask the first question, if I may, and I think people would like to. I would certainly like to know more about what you're calling the mystery religions, please.
The mystery religions came about with Mitra in the sense of the different cult forms that took among the Romans and the early people. And because the cult forms were more related to more belief systems, superstition, and a whole bunch of other things, were not really connected with the concept of righteousness, etc. They were not given the level of being a proper religion, which is mostly recognized by the fact that religions are based on teachings of righteousness.
So would the word pagan be appropriate or no?
Well, it would be appropriate from the people who are not pagan. But for pagans, maybe it is not appropriate. You understand what I'm saying? We all look at each other in a way that only we can, through our eyes.
Well,
But
yeah.
that doesn't mean that they probably have to be like that. And I'm not afraid of accepting a pagan as a good human being. All I want is, I want a pagan to accept me as a good human.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else, please? Shiraz.
Yes, Shiraz has his hand up.
Yeah.
Hello, Shiraz.
Mm.
Or Mike.
Can't hear you. Shiraz, we can't hear you. I don't think you're muted, but I can't hear you. Anyone else hear Shiraz? No, no.
I'll tell you something interesting about Shiraz.
Yeah.
While he finds the button for his voice. Can we hear you, Shiraz? No, we cannot.
No.
Shiraz is actually the name of a town in Iran. It is also the name of a type of wine, red wine. Shiraz. And in the Sasanian times, before the Arab invasion, all the ceremonies that took place among the Zoroastrian priests to invite them to your house for a ceremony of this or that or any of the rites of passage, part of the payment done to the priest was always a flask or two of red wine. That was the payment. So, Shiraz, we respected you in our prayer ceremonies all the time.
Okay. Shiraz, it doesn't show that you're muted, but I can't hear you.
One thing,
You need to.
I've taken a couple of classics courses at university, so that gives me some expertise. No, I'm kidding. But generally what we learned in school is that mystery cults have secret rites and religions generally don't.
Yes, that is also correct. That is the modern version of understanding, especially certain groups of people who form. Even a lot of the universities have their sororities, Phi, Beta, Gamma, whatever, and they all have initiation rites, like how you can enter, and those can be treated like that as the cultish form.
Shiraz, try. What's happening with you there?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes. Yes, we can. Excellent.
Wonderful. So what I need to, and my question is quite simple, actually, Firdosh, knowing that the Parsi community in India, very highly respected, I presume that Zoroastrianism is also followed by people from other cultures, especially, I'm sure there must be those who are able to do it in private in Iran, for example, right? I know that Zoroastrians are always under trouble. They are not in trouble, but
Yes, there is. You're right. There is many different kinds of Zoroastrianism,
yeah,
as you have different kinds of Buddhism and Buddhism. Human nature is like that. We tend to develop our own thought process into different philosophies and understanding. Of course, the basic population of Zoroastrians has to be in Iran. That is where it developed. It may not have started there because we believe it started near the Aral Sea in the southern Russian regions, which is referred to in our scripture as the land of Aryana Vaeja, or land of the Aryans. That is where the word Aryan comes from. Okay? And we were considered to be people from that region. But because of the winter storms and other ways of not having grazing areas in the winter time, the population, because we were originally all shepherding and animal husbandry people, we had to move south to more greener pastures and later on settle down as agricultural people. So that is where we moved from. But when we came to Iran, that is where it became officially the religion of the country, which grew to become the biggest empires of its time at that time. And that is where Zoroastrianism was spreading. Now, after, of course, the invasion, a lot of us lost our religion and lives. A whole bunch of people were converted, and a few of them decided to run away to preserve the religion, and a group went to China, and we have historical evidence of that. It's up to 1300s, and this all started the movement in 900 AD or 900 AC, whereas the Arab invasion was around 700 AD. And it took us like a couple hundred years to then gather our stuff, literature, etc. And one group came to India because we knew the Indian trade routes, the way to come to India by ships, etc. And we had some early settlements in India also. So we had some knowledge.
I just bought some stuff at the store to make a smoothie, so I could definitely make a smoothie for us.
Are you going shopping?
Yes. Oh no.
Sorry.
Beryl, can you mute yourself? Beryl, hi.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So yes, therefore Iran became the original country. And what we talk about Iran today is not Iran of what we were talking about 2000 years ago. Things change over time. And in fact, much of the destruction of even our literature and people was done much later on. Even a person like Genghis Khan was involved in the mass slaughter of Zoroastrians because they were always not allowed to settle within walled cities. They were all given their place outside the wall and less protection. So if somebody came to conquer the place, where do you think he would first attack? Inside the castle or outside the castle or whatever. So because of that, even up to 1200, 1300 AD, there have been instances of mass genocide, etc., which has made it impossible for us to grow. Now today in India, when we went there, that was one group that settled and prospered. Just survival is not enough to move in life. You have to have some degree of prosperity. And this is what we got in India. That is why we are most thankful to the west coast of India people who are basically Vaishnavites, who are very docile, peaceful, inviting, kind. And because of that, we tried to merge with them to the point of not upsetting their apple carts. If I was a man on the street, totally like a bum or a beggar, and you are kind enough to take me into your house and give me food and tell me, okay, you can stay over here a couple of days till we find some better place for you, and you leave me in your house and go to work. And when you come back, if you see that I have rearranged your furniture, how would you feel? That is why wherever we have gone, we have not tried to rearrange the furniture. Very important concept. The only thing we have done is built more furniture. There is a big conceptual understanding of that. And in India, we have done that because of the Hindu system of that area and that time, they have the best live and let live system. It's amazing how even in their own literature, in the Upanishads, there is a paragraph that says in Sanskrit that there are infinite ways to meet God that have been found. There are infinite ways to meet God that are being found. And there are infinite ways to meet God that will be found. Please tell me, with that kind of an understanding, how can that group be dominating to say they're the only ones? You know, scripturally, they're bound not to do that. And that is why we got along very well over there, because we were safe. In fact, they gave us all the necessary protection as a minority, so that we survived, and not only survived, but we prospered. I mean, I don't want to go into the achievements of the Parsi community in India, because that would be another whole topic. But people who know that. But you have to understand one thing. When we went to India, we were majority Hindus around us 1,000 years ago. Islam had not come to India, Christianity had not come to India at that time. So we were around Hindus everywhere. There were Buddhists and Jains and other groups of the similar kind of line of thinking as the Hindu. Now in Iran, those who were left behind were still under the Muslim. And these two influences on us, both were small groups, but obviously in Iran, we are trying to survive. Whereas in India, survival was given by them to us as a gift, for which we are thankful. And we tried to prosper. And in the prosperity, we brought about all the good things that you can see today. And with all due respect to Freddie Mercury and all, we don't consider those kind of things as the important things we have done. What we have done in India is amazing as a small group of people, hardly, not even 8,000 today, of which 53,000 are in Bombay.
Firdosh, thank you. Jenny has a question, please.
I
Yes.
was wondering what is happening to the Zoroastrian community in Iran, knowing that there's lots of unrest and discrimination there.
That is a very interesting question. It even baffles some of us. Of course, in Iran, we will always have that level of discrimination, second-class citizenship, even practiced today in the market. If a Zoroastrian goes and feels an orange or an apple to purchase, once he touches it, he has to buy it, because they're considered untouchables, and therefore we cannot sort of pollute the food. There is another way of what they do is, if a Zoroastrian is sitting on his donkey to go to his farm from whatever little plot of land he has, and along the way, if one of the Muslim mullahs or imams or whoever is riding on a horse, the Zoroastrian has to stop his donkey, get off the donkey, stand there with his head bowed down till the imam or the mullah goes on his horse, and then he gets back on his donkey. And so these are a couple of personal, physical situations I've told you. But the other major thing today is Iran is not interested anymore as a country, as a philosophy, as a people, to hurt us, harm us anymore. How much do you want to beat a guy that is already on the ground? Today, they have other better targets than us. They're after the Baha'is, who are actually on the growing side. We are actually on the diminishing side. So that kind of makes it safe for us, because they know they're going to do no harm anymore to their regime or to their place. But the subtle things are happening, which are quiet. This also came up at the United Nations meeting when one of the Iranian presidents was there. He was asked about this law in Iran. It's a written law as part of the, I don't want to call it Sharia, but it is in that same category, where it says that if a non-Muslim, this is for Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians, everyone, dies, the property of that person is to be given to his son. They don't count the daughters or the wife as somebody who can receive the property. And it says, if any son of that person has converted to Islam, that son gets the property. Others don't. This is a law today in part of Iran. It is practiced. So now you tell me, please, if I'm part of the three brothers and my brother becomes a Muslim and he gets all the property and I will get nothing, what am I going to do? will become a Muslim to get my part. You see, this is very, very soft sell, kind of coercion, but it is completely disguised in a way that, oh, we're not going to kill him. You're not going to have to hurt him. You already hurt him in his livelihood. How better can you hurt him?
Yeah,
than
that's
that?
very good. Thank you. Earl, please. Unmute, Earl, unmute. Earl, unmute. We can't hear you, Earl. No. There you
Sorry. So how many Zoroastrians are left in Iran now?
In Iran, of course, it is difficult to count because we are not even allowed to go around doing a proper census. But one time in the early 2000s, 2002 or 3, around that time, we suddenly ended up having 93,000 Zoroastrians. And of course, we knew that this was totally false. How can that happen? Because the one before, we were already down to like 45,000 or so. How did we double up suddenly? And we found out later that a lot of the Baha'is wrote down Zoroastrian in the census so that they would not be persecuted. So suddenly our numbers went up, and we did research, found out we have communities over there that we can communicate with. And they said, no, this is one of the other things that take for granted. So there is about today 25,000.
And in the world?
Now you have to understand another concept of what and who is a Zoroastrian. Iranian Zoroastrian is slightly different from an Indian Zoroastrian, who is slightly different from a Kurdish Zoroastrian, who is slightly different from Kazakhstan, Tajikistan. There are Zoroastrians all over the place, including in Russia. We have Zoroastrians in Moscow, in Sweden, a whole bunch of places, including, of course, Canada and US. Did you know that Toronto today is the largest population of Zoroastrians in the world? Third largest. First is Bombay, then we have Tehran, and then we have Toronto. And this tells you that Zoroastrians, whether they are Parsis or Iranian or wherever, they've all migrated towards countries that are essentially where you can live freely, in freedom of practice of religion, in freedom of life, in freedom of property. So we get obviously attracted because that's the kind of people we are. We cannot survive in a regime that does not allow you the freedom to operate.
In India,
That is actually a greatest compliment that I can give to Canada, US, England, and the West. Even in Pakistan today, when I came to America in 1971, there were approximately 9,000 Parsis in all of Pakistan. Then we had the separation from India, etc., etc. A lot of the Hindus and Muslims crossed borders, but hardly any Parsis did that because we were doing fine. We were enjoying life and doing all the good stuff, and we were protected otherwise. And of course, there was the British laws that protected the minorities in India at that time. So we were doing fine. But now today, again, in Pakistan, there is that same kind of undercurrent of discrimination. If you want to go to college, and I have got friends in Calgary who can justify or testify that the guy wants to do mechanical engineering, and he gets some obscure engineering like water management. What is he going to do water manage in a country like Iran where there is serious problem of water? But they come to Canada, and guess what? They can do very well as environmental engineers and other things. And most of the young people coming from Iran in today's time are all into their PhDs, and most of them in the engineering, dentistry, and other side.
Earl, you had another question?
in India, the Muslims are suffering terrible persecution, and the Christians, to some extent, have to worry some. Do the Parsis have to worry under the BJP?
First of all, the Parsis never have to worry any kind, BJP or not. We have never been treated badly. We have always been treated fairly. But you have to understand, even as a minority with hardly 80,000 in the whole of India, Parsis have never claimed a status of minority or as a tribal group for any kind of affirmative action. Missions, money, handouts, nothing. In fact, even when we were, a classic example is the COVID vaccination, which is manufactured in Pune by a company owned by a Parsi, who is the largest manufacturer of vaccines of all kinds in India, and who works with World Health Organization. When a certain number of vaccines, which is hardly anything, like 50,000, 80,000 doses, the Parsi leadership group that we have in India called the Panchayat refused, saying, no, we will wait for our turn. We do not want to be treated special. See, when you do that, the local people develop a certain degree of respect and honor for you. But if you say, no, no, I am a Parsi and this guy is a Parsi, therefore I should get the vaccination first, you can die, it's okay. How are you going to develop a good reputation? This is what is the key to understanding our nature, which most people are not understanding anyways. We have not claimed a single level of affirmative action, though we would 100% qualify for it as a minority. Think about it. Now, the other thing you mentioned about the Muslims are, I'm sorry, sir, I do not agree with you at all. Even under Modi or not, no community is that way officially threatened. There may be local skirmishes. There may be neighborhoods where a bunch of Christians were treated like this by a bunch of Hindus, etc. There is no national policy or even statewide policy like that. In fact, Modi has come up and announced publicly, you can be anybody, any religion, anywhere, as long as you consider yourself as an Indian first, he will protect you. Now, what more do you want?
Yeah, I agree with you.
So,
And Muslims are as safe in India as in any other Islamic country.
in fact, more chances are given. They have more properties, hospitals, schools, universities, all bunch of things. That is, of course,
Yeah.
if you
And
kind
that's
of
all.
nowadays, it is such that if you look at the print media, the electronic media, or the television media,
Yes.
media has its own agenda, and they will tell you what they want.
And
then-
opposition party people also.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
Now,
want to-
then I do understand that Modi comes from the party which considers in a party platform to believe that India should be for Hindus. But that doesn't mean they are saying India is for Hindus and everybody else get out. Because you would have to take boats and get out of India and go find somewhere else, like we did from Iran. We were never forced ever to do that. Like I said, in fact, we were taken care of. We were given all the opportunity. Please, in the simple thing that Bhagdeep was mentioning earlier, the first field marshal, the highest rank in military of the Indian Army, which is the third largest army in the world, is a Parsi. Where are all the billion others who can become field marshals?
And atomic energy also, if you see.
Atomic energy, because that's what I'm saying. If you look
Rabba.
at Freddie Mercury, you're totally on the wrong track of
Yeah.
what is done by the Parsis in India for the. Did you know that Israel has printed a postage stamp of the Cyrus cylinder, which is in 10-karat gold? It's the only country that has a stamp in gold. And the only stamp is from the Persian king Cyrus.
Thank you. Jenny has her hand up.
I just wondered if Iran has a national policy of discrimination, or if it's just something that happens.
I don't think you can package it as a discrimination policy as a nation. But you need to understand one important part of the Islamic culture. Islam itself, by itself, is a very good religion, a very nice religion. I've read 2 translations of the Quran, and I have not found anything that I can say that is bad. Well, look at it. The first thing it says is you are supposed to look after your fellow man. Well, what does Christianity say? Love thy neighbor. It also says your actions will be judged according to your intentions. Very good. Intentions are very important. It is the problem, and we have the same problem in our religion or our society. This is not religion that I'm talking about now, and that is the do's and don'ts that one needs to do in that particular society, which is now the law of how you act, which is in Islam, it's Sharia law. which is in our system also. We have the Vandita that tells you things like that. But of course, we don't follow that anymore because we have kind of been on in Sasanian times. The Vandita was a very important thing. In fact, that was the only time in the history of Zoroastrian where the high priest went on a horse with a sword on his waist as a high priest. That is unthinkable in Zoroastrianism. In fact, we do not even have a concept of holy war because a holy war is an oxymoron. No war can be holy. Please think about this, okay? Never in the history of Zoroastrian for last 2,500 or more that we know, and we've had battles with the Greeks and with the Romans and with the Byzantine Empire and Muslim. Everybody we've had battles with, but not one single battle can be attributed that was carried out by the Persians to spread Zoroastrianism. Not one.
Wonderful, thank you. Any more questions? Pat? Pat?
Yes, you had mentioned earlier about scriptures, and I was wondering if you have your own scriptures or whether you use the Judeo-Christian scriptures or what?
No, we have our own scripture, for sure. In fact, over time, we have influenced Jewish scriptures and then consequently the Christian and Islamic culture. We did that because in the times of Cyrus, or 500-600 years before Christ, Christianity was not even there, that he conquered Babylon. If you read the story of Wikipedia, will tell you all about Cyrus. And there was a Greek historian, Xenophon, who used to be the student of Socrates. He has written a book called Cyropedia about how Cyrus was a wonderful manager besides the king, how he looked after his people, how he gave them freedom and prosperity, and how they all loved him as a king. They wanted him because he conquered Babylon without firing a single shot. Did you know the beautiful strategy that he used? He surrounded the city of Babylon, which was a walled city, and instead of attacking it, with catapults that throw in balls of fire and stones and rocks, he just diverted the river, about the two rivers over there, the Tigris and the Euphrates, and he just did not allow any food and water to go into the city for a couple of months. Then when the people were all upset, we want to be liberated, they actually threw bags of water and food by their catapults inside. And the people inside opened the doors and welcomed them. Did not have to fire a single shot. Can you think of that being done today anywhere? Please think about it. So we have had that. Now, does not mean that all our kings were nice and good. There were some nutsos also, because that is history, that is human nature. Show me if you had 100 kings in your history, that all 100 were nice people. Probably a good bit of them were crazy and violent and ruthless, etc. etc. So we've had our kings who are considered to be crazies among us, but we learn about them. We learn the bad things and try not to do the bad things. We learn about the good things and try to do more of them. One king Xerxes, who is the son of Darius or Darius, even better king than Cyrus, who actually set up all the empire and the roads and the system of management and looking after the country. The guy who came up with the Pony Express of how the soldiers took the king's edict to the different. His son got involved in attacking Greece as a matter of continuing his father's campaign because Darius' father lost the big battle in Marathon. Today we all run the same distance in marathon Olympic Games of what the Greek soldier Philippides ran from the plains of Marathon to the Senate to proclaim that we have defeated the Persians, and he died at the steps because of exhaustion. Today, in his honor, we have the marathon run of the same distance that he did at that time. And his son, Xerxes, was stupid enough to want to go, and this was all in the times of they did something bad to us, we have to teach them a lesson. And yes, it is the Greeks who started the mess. They attacked Sardis, which was a border town of Persian Empire, and burnt it down with all the people in it. So these guys got of course, when you're running an empire, you cannot allow others to come in and burn your cities down. You got to do something about it. So that is where Xerxes went to conquer. And during one of the battles of the navy, where the Persian navy was one of the biggest and the most navy with lots of boats and all that, he sent a portion of his navy to go around the island where that the 300 Spartan stories come from, where the Persians could not break into the pass because the geography was such that your bigger army is useless. There's only so much room you can pass. So he sent and in the night there was a storm and the boats got drowned or sunk, and he lost his people, soldiers in that. And this made the King Xerxes so mad that he ordered his soldiers next day morning, as part of the religious whatever ceremony he was doing, to whip the sea, to literally take whips and go and smack the water. Now, if you are not so enough to do that, then yes, we've had not so kings.
Wonderful. Thank you, Firdosh, again, thank you so much. On behalf of the Interfaith Center and everybody, this was wonderful. I see a few people have to go back to work, so they're dropping off, but we want to thank you. I can't really do a plug for membership for our center because all of you are members, which is awesome. And thank you. Thank you again, everybody.
To those who have to go to work, I wish you all the best. Please go to work and pay your taxes.
Yes.
So people like me in retirement can live off the
Exactly. Thank you, Firdosh. All the best. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate this opportunity.
Good. And we'll put it up.
I can always depend on you guys. And the Edmonton Interfaith Center is the best. And I'm not trying to kind of butter you up.
No.
Then all the interfaiths and movements that I have done, including Dallas, Calgary, and British Columbia now that I'm in, you folks have something unique and special. Please take care of it and preserve it.
Well, thank you. We think we are too, and it's because of members and board members like you that we are. In fact, for 26 years next month, it will be in March. It'll be 26 years since we incorporated as a society, and that's pretty good in this day and age, I think. So thank you for your kind words as well. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
See you, Karen, again.